explain various ways of relaxing. But first, I'd like to help you understand why relaxing is so important if you're suffering from any form of emotional distress. Anxiety, depression, obsessive compulsions, addiction, and so on. But also, what relaxation actually is. Before we start, you may believe that you're unable to relax. Well, this is just not true. How can I be so confident when I don't even know you or understand your circumstances? Well, it's because I know that when you go to sleep at night, you go from being wide awake to sound asleep, and as you do, you pass through the relaxation state. So you have actually been relaxed, at least briefly, every day of your life, at least every day you've slept. So you can do it. If you're following my work elsewhere, you will have heard me talking about false beliefs and how these can actually slow down your recovery. Well, this is one such belief, that you cannot relax, and it's just not true. The question you're interested in is probably, how can you relax when you're feeling distressed? That's more accurate. Let's think about emotions in general for a moment. All emotions have a purpose, even those which may be troubling you. So before I further explain how to relax, I'd first like to explore a little how your brain actually works and why you're feeling emotional in the first place. Actually, emotions have two main purposes. They'll guide you either towards or away from specific people or places. For instance, you may not be happy to go to work because you really don't enjoy it. But then again, they also tell you how to respond to what is around you. If there's someone you really dislike, you try to avoid them as much as possible, whereas you will actively seek out people you enjoy being with. So you use emotion to help evaluate the world around you, and you're worried about an upcoming operation, or you're happy to see your child smile. Emotions guide you through these choices and are built up from your experience of life through a process I call emotional tagging. You experience life through your five senses, which collect massive amounts of information from your environment every second of your life, and they pass this information into your brain for understanding and to allow you to take action. As the information arrives in the brain, it's first checked for danger. The danger check will help you to avoid repeating dangerous behaviours. You'll only touch a red-hot radiator once if you're a young child. You'll never do it again. Or you'll avoid the school bully after that first experience. This danger check I refer to as the security guard, as it is only focused on your safety. The danger check's actually a very simple black and white process. Something's either perceived to be dangerous or it isn't, one or the other. If it is dangerous, your security guard will raise an alarm. This is the fight or flight response, and it's purely instinctive, and it will make you take some immediate action. If you're crossing the road without paying attention and you suddenly hear a car horn, you will not turn around and figure out what model of car and how attractive the colour is. You'll jump. Purely instinctive reaction. If no danger is found in the information your senses are collecting, the information is then passed on to the emotional brain for tagging. The emotional tagging process is much more refined and sophisticated, as you have a full range of emotions to choose from. Everything you experience will be emotionally tagged with one or more tags. This is what causes you to smile when you meet a friend, or cry when you experience a sad movie. Both of these have already been previously tagged in life to allow you to respond appropriately. All of these tagged memories are stored in a filing cabinet within the emotional brain. In the case of a friend, you recognise her and you're pleased to see her from your previous experience. However, when you cry at a movie which you've never seen before, there is a different process at work. This is a process I call pattern matching. Your brain understands that you haven't seen this particular movie before, but from your previous experience of life, you simply know when something sad happens. You match the current movie to your past experience of life, find the match, and begin to feel sad and then cry. This pattern matching process is actually how you recognise things, and again is built up over time as your experience of life grows. Think of how, as a young child, you learned perhaps to recognise a cow. At first, a parent might point through the window of the car at cows in the field. They may appear large because they're close, or some may be small if they're far away. They may be different colours or different patterns. Some may be moving and some may not, and so on. Then later that night, when reading a nighttime story, the same parent points to a cow in a book. It's completely flat, tiny, and it doesn't move at all. Instead of being confused, your brain is learning the art of pattern matching and approximation. You learn to store many different descriptions of a cow in your long-term memory, and you recognise them by pattern matching. We understand the details of our surroundings by pattern matching millions of times every second of life, and this process happens so instinctively we never even notice it. If you were to lose your sight, your pattern matching process would change. Your other senses would increase in sensitivity, and the pattern matching would go on. It's easiest to think of pattern matching in terms of pictures and sight, but in reality, you use all 5 senses to pattern match all the way through your life. Think of when you perhaps go back to your childhood home after a long absence. There's a familiar smell that just takes you back. Or when you hear music from your teenage years, again it transports you back in time. You're pattern matching to past experiences and recalling. After you've added emotional tags to the information coming in from your senses, the information is all then passed to your thinking brain for understanding and action. Your need for security and emotional awareness comes before you actually think. Very fundamental. So, why is this so important when all you want to do is learn how to relax? Well, you want to relax because you're in a state of emotional distress and instinctively know you need to calm down. Not to mention that probably everybody around you is telling you you need to calm down. But now that you understand that your emotions actually have purpose, and this is also true of your current emotional state, whether it's anxiety, depression, or whatever it is, it has a purpose. Your distress is a message from your security guard and your emotionally tagged past experience. It's a message that tells you something is wrong in your current real day-to-day life, something important, and that you need to pay attention to it and fix it. You may be with a partner who's maybe not good for you. Or you might be in the wrong job, or working for the wrong boss. You may be being used and abused because of your obliging nature. You like to help people. Or you might be being made to feel bad about yourself simply because you don't like confronting people. There are many different things that can go wrong in life, and if you're getting emotional messages from your unconscious mind, there is at least one important area of your life with a significant challenge in it. You also should now understand that you pattern match your current daily life to your past every second of the day. If you're in a job that you absolutely detest, but you keep going to the same office every day because you need the money, Your pattern matching process will create distress in some form just to keep you aware of what you're doing. If you continue to go to work every day and keep re-experiencing whatever is bad about your job, this will be reinforcing the previously stored patterns and making them stronger, which in turn will increase the intensity of the message your unconscious mind is giving you. In other words, the longer you avoid doing something about your real problem, the job in this case, the more distressed you're likely to become. This perhaps explains why so many people are off work due to stress. It's not necessarily the job that's stressful, but it's the way the individuals are reacting to it from their previous experience. That particular job just doesn't suit that particular individual's needs, and they're unable to hide this from their own unconscious minds. So, in this case, the lasting solution to your need for relaxation would actually be to do something about the job, not simply learn to relax. In other words, treat the cause, not the symptom. However, as it may take you some time to find a better solution to your own particular real-life issues, and your unconscious mind is not going to make it easier for you until you do, you need an emergency toolkit, some techniques you can use to gain some short-term relief from whichever emotional condition you happen to be suffering. So let's understand a little about how your mind and body combine to create emotional distress in the first place. Then we can look at different techniques for combating these. We live our daily lives on a very simple emotional scale, with happy and calm and relaxed at one end, and anxious or depressed and so on at the other end. For those who are already at the happy end, it's relatively easy to relax. They only have a short distance to go. But if you are at the more distressed end, then you have to work a bit harder to get to a relaxed state. So the key is understanding the truth of this and practicing over and over until you learn how to do these techniques. Don't simply give up and say it's too hard or you can't do it. Remember, you can do it, and you do it every night as you sleep, and that it will take more effort for you because you are distressed in the first place. If you can accept the basic truth of this, you will succeed, as all we're really talking about is learning a new skill. You'll be able to do that. You are designed to learn new skills and have been doing it since you were born. There are two truths about the physical aspects of emotional distress. Firstly, when you're in any form of emotional distress, your imagination will be both very active and negative. If you're anxious, you may well be anxious about everything, and your own internal voice is constantly warning you of what might go wrong. If you're depressed, your internal voice may be predicting how awful you'll feel if you have to go out or meet with friends. If you're obsessed, your internal voice will be telling you that you really need to keep re-washing your hands because something terrible will happen to you if you don't. Secondly, your physiology will change in one or more of a wide range of ways. Your body temperature may increase. Your heart begin to race. Your breathing might become quite labored. You may be lightheaded, or your limbs may be tense or twitch, and so on. The list of physical effects from emotional distress is really quite long. These physical symptoms are all caused when your imagination turns negative and becomes overactive. Your fight or flight mechanism, the security guard, is probably making you fearful, even if there was no obvious immediate danger. When this happens, your brain simply doesn't function as well as it should, including the tagging process. You begin to push away from things which would normally give you pleasure or comfort. Family and friends, for instance. As the fight or flight mechanism fires, it can cause a chain reaction in the body by releasing adrenaline into the bloodstream. This prepares you to run away by increasing the heart rate to get more blood and therefore oxygen to the legs and the arms, while altering your breathing to provide the extra oxygen in the first place. This redirecting of your blood supply can reduce the blood flow to the brain, which may cause lightheadedness or fainting. It can also cause temperature fluctuations and muscle spasms. In other words, if you have an overactive negative imagination, this can cause massive real physiological changes in the way your body is functioning. Ask anyone who's had a panic attack how they have felt. Most people think they're dying. So, to recap a little, all of your physical symptoms, which are the things you're probably worried about, are being caused by an overactive negative imagination, which is in turn only trying to get you to focus on some areas of your life which are simply not the way you really want them to be. You're trapped, perhaps, by circumstances, or at least you feel you are. Now, I can't help you here with fixing whatever these real issues of your life are, but I can help you to better control your imagination. And this is why the following techniques work, because they're based on the physiology of how your mind and body actually work. Although superficially, we're actually all quite similar. We have a heart, lungs, blood, and so on. The nuances from person to person can be quite significant. In other words, we may have essentially the same components, but there may be differences in the way we're put together or wired. This means that although all of the following techniques work, they will work better for some people than for others. So you really need to try them all out and then select whichever work best for you. I'll also talk to you at the end about how you can combine your choices into one single more powerful tool that's uniquely designed for you. So let's make a start. The most obvious relaxation technique is physical exercise. Any age-appropriate exercise will help because it will use the extra level of adrenaline in your blood. It will burn oxygen and allow your mind to slowly switch off the fight or flight response. You are doing actually what your fight or flight mechanism has designed you to do. You're exercising. It's just that you're not actually running away from something. So, age-appropriate exercise is number one. Then, the next area to look at is altering your breathing. Let's talk about breathing just for a moment. At any moment in life, your body is always in a state of tension. When you're running and you're using your muscles, the tension in them is relatively high. But when you're laying down asleep at night, the tension is relatively low. This is also true for internal muscles, such as the heart, bowels, and so on. When you sleep, the blood supply is redirected from the limbs, which you're no longer using, to the brain and the digestive tract, so the tension moves according to need. And your mind and body do all this without any conscious thought. You can intervene in processes which are normally unconscious by simply bringing the process to mind and focusing your attention on it. As an example, try it right now, simply holding your breath for as long as you can comfortably. You see that as soon as you start breathing again, your breathing is quite different from it was before you started. You have the need to rebuild up that oxygen level in your body, and it'll take you perhaps a moment or two, until your breathing pattern slips back down into that same nice, easy, relaxed, unconscious rhythm. Now, when you breathe in, you oxygenate the blood in preparation for action. And when you breathe out, you release carbon dioxide and trigger something called the parasympathetic nervous system, which is actually just the body's natural relaxation state. Your brain is dependent upon you breathing for oxygen. If you were to starve the brain of oxygen for a few minutes, you would die. So, without being so extreme, if you were to restrict the oxygen flow, you would slow down the brain's functions, including your overactive imagination. There are many different breathing exercises you can try, but the one I favour is what I think is the easiest. Let me put this simply to you. If you consciously breathe out more slowly than you breathe in, you will be triggering the relaxation response more than you will be oxygenating the brain. With every breath, you'll be calming down more than you'll be energizing. And therefore, over just a few minutes of breathing out more slowly than in, you'll be lowering your emotional distress. Very simple. Some people, when doing this, have a count. They count in for 7 and count out for 11, or some such ratio of this. As long as the outward count is longer than the in count, and this helps, well, that's great. Whatever count you may use, just remember to breathe out longer than you breathe in, and the physiology will take care of the rest. Next, let's talk about tension. I've already mentioned how physical exercise can use up the adrenaline and fool your fight or flight mechanism into thinking you're running away. Well, sometimes it's just not possible to take physical exercise when you actually need to calm down. When you're looking after the children, or when you have a busy series of meetings at work, for instance. So this following technique is useful on these occasions, as well as for those who are less physically able. Let's consider basic physiology again for a moment. If you were to go for a run, your muscle tension would increase to give you motion. But when you finish and sit down, your body would probably flop into a relaxed state. Think of how an elastic band stretches under tension and then totally relaxes when the tension is released. This is how your body is designed to function. The muscles tense as we need them, but whenever we don't, they naturally relax to allow the muscles to repair, to rebuild, and to strengthen once more. We can use this natural physical aspect of how the body works to develop another relaxation technique. Let's do it now. Make fists of your hands and hold them firmly for around 30 seconds. Let's do it now together. While you're doing this, you should be able to feel the tension all the way up your arms to the shoulders, and even in the shoulders, and even up to the neck muscles. Just holding the tension firmly all the way to the neck muscles. Typically, you would be doing this for about 30 seconds or so. Nice and firm, it shouldn't be painful, just a lot of tension. Now, as we begin to release, what I'd like you to do is do it slowly over a count of 5. Let's start now just releasing the tension from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and just let your arms rest. You should notice your arms really feel quite relaxed. And if you've been able to get the tension up to your shoulders and neck will also be nicely relaxed. And the longer you sit, the relaxation should begin to spread. To help with this, you can simultaneously do exactly the same with your feet and your legs by pressing the soles of your feet firmly onto the floor and holding them for 30 seconds, creating tension in the calf muscles and the thighs. And you can actually do both the fists and the feet at the same time, so you get a more top-to-toe version of relaxation. Moving on, another technique is distraction. To distract your mind from whatever distress you're having. And there are many forms of this, as I'm sure you've found your own relief. However, what I'd like to talk to you about today is mental distractions. Things you can do without anyone else ever being aware of what you're doing. If you were to consider your brain for a moment, there are two large outer hemispheres. And although they combine and work together to do most of the things you need them to do, the right hemisphere is generally more creative and imaginative, whereas the left hemisphere tends to be more structured and logical. If you were to look at the scan of your brain when you're in distress, and you now know that your imagination would be highly active and negative, you would see many red highlighted active areas in the right hemisphere. However, the left hemisphere may be quite quiet, with few, if any, red highlights. The red areas represent brain activity, and as you know, brain activity requires oxygen, which in turn travels in the blood supply. In the previous technique, you turn down the supply of oxygen in the blood. In this technique, you learn to turn down the blood supply itself. There's only a finite blood supply available to your brain, and if you can use it elsewhere, as you did by exercising, for instance, then your imagination will calm down. But where it's not possible to exercise, you can simply increase the usage of your left hemisphere, literally robbing the right hemisphere and your imagination from fuel. There are many ways of doing this. You probably already actually have your own techniques, but maybe weren't quite sure why they worked. Crosswords, many people do that, or Sudoku, or any other form of puzzle. But let me explain a couple that I like, nice simple techniques. Inside your head, using your own internal voice, you don't need to speak out loud, start spelling backwards. Try a nice simple word to start with, like cat. Do it just now. You probably find that quite easy. But now, try elephant. Not so easy. Think about what you just did. You probably noticed it was going to be harder to start with. And then you concentrated and you slowly probably managed to do it. But in order to do so, you had to think logically. In other words, you had to use your left hemisphere, drawing the blood supply away from your imagination and momentarily at least calming you down. Learn to do this. It's simple but really effective. If you're no good at spelling, try a number problem instead. Anything which requires logical thought will serve. Run up the 13 times table as far as you can go. Multiply two large numbers together in your head. Whether using numbers or words, continue to push the level of difficulty up until you really have to concentrate. That's the key. It's the concentration that robs the imagination of its blood supply. Finally, there's one other method I'd like to talk to you about. I call tapping. This is a rather silly looking routine, but it works surprisingly well for many people. Again, there are many different versions of this, and I've simplified it over the years to what I find seems to work best for most people and is nice and simple. Rather than explain it to you, I'd rather demonstrate it for you. It involves taking one finger, I tend to use the middle finger of one hand, and tap that finger on half a dozen points, which I'll now do for you. Starting with above the eye, just tapping half a dozen times. Solidly enough that it sounds a bit like a woodpecker, but not painful. So first point is above the eye, second point at the side of the eye, all on the bottom. Third point is underneath the eye. Fourth point underneath the nose. Fifth point, tip of the chin. And the sixth point is on the opposite hand, on the heel here. When you're finished, just let your hands relax and ask yourself one simple question. Do you feel just ever so slightly more relaxed or calm? If the answer is yes, off you go again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Relax, ask the question. With this technique, there's no right single method. You can use either hand. You can use the hand on the same side or on the opposite side of your face. And you may find in time that some of the points you're tapping have more effect for you than others. If this is the case, drop off the ineffective points and only use the points that work for you. Now, there's a whole range of techniques available to you now, so what I'd like to do is talk to you now about how you produce that unique combination that's powerful enough, designed specifically for your own needs, the things that work for you. So as I said earlier, everyone is different, and you need to find out which of these previous techniques work best for you first. But when you've done that, learn to combine them. And let me give you an example. Let's say that you found that altering your breathing, using the arm tension, and spelling backwards have worked best for you. So create a routine that starts by slowing down your out-breath until you're in a nice, comfortable rhythm. You might do this for 30 seconds or even a minute. Then, once you've got that rhythm going, tense up your forearms and hold the tension for a count of a further 30 seconds, but keep the slow out-breath going in the background. When you've been doing that and you're ready, 30 seconds later, release the tension slowly to a count of 5 and enjoy the feeling for a few moments, and then start mentally spelling backwards. The breathing still, nice and slow out-breath in the background. The relaxation spreading from the release of the tension in your arms, and now you're counting backwards at the same time. Build one technique on top of another and fit them together in whatever way works best for you. Finally, I hope you find these techniques useful, but I'd like to remind you that whatever distress you're currently suffering from, it's an unconscious message that something in your real current life is not right for you, and you need to really do something about it when you're ready. It's likely that the relaxation techniques you've chosen will need to be used quite regularly, and perhaps for some time until you do something about your real life issues. If you would like help with either anxiety or depression, full video programs are available in the 3-week series on Amazon.com. Bye for now.